Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Our Stories, His Glory. I know I say this every week, but I'm really excited about my guest today. Um, I have Tricia Kelly, and you guys are going to recognize her voice that listen to 106.9 WMIT FM in Asheville, Christian radio, my favorite radio station. And I'm the one that my button goes straight to in my truck and the car. Tricia, how are you today? I appreciate you being here, first of all.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, Rusty. This is a wonderful opportunity. It's so much fun to talk to you and have this opportunity to just kind of brag on God a little bit. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, I want to brag on you first, and I know you don't like that, but my wife says you have the most calming, soothing voice on radio. She says, I love to listen to Tricia Kelly. And so, what we started doing is we used to just really listen to radio when we're when you're automobiles, and then so recently, within the last month or since Christmas or so, we don't have the TV on much anymore. And during the day, my wife's a stay-at-home mom, and with me, I'm teaching during the pandemic. I teach from the upstairs room. We just have his radio, not his. Ooh, that's a Freudian slip.
No,
His
we
radio
love
is
we
one of
love his radio.
we do
We're
too.
friends. Yeah.
89.3. When we go to South Carolina
Yep.
to see my son at Clemson, we turn on 89.3, but
Yeah.
106.9 is on in our house. And from 11 to 3, we get to hear Tricia Kelly. So, first of all, tell us about, I want to hear about the radio station. I want to go back into your background a little bit, but I want to talk first about 106.9. And as people may know, it's listener supported, no advertisements unless they honor and glorify the Lord. Why is that important for a radio station like Christian radio station to be donor supported, and what are the advantages of
Well, that's an interesting question. I think one of the major advantages of it is that we're all on the same team. It's not like we're providing something, we hope you like it. This is a family coming together to provide something for the family. To use a sports analogy, you get a little skin in the game, right? When you are a supporter of a radio ministry like ours, for example,
Yeah.
or his radio, and you listen to it, you know that you are a part of it. You're a part of every story. You're a part of every song. And I think when we get to heaven, whatever we've done in obedience in that manner, I think we'll get to see the people that we helped. Someone may come up to you and go, thank you. I did not take that next drink because of the song that was on, or the teaching podcast saved my life or saved my marriage. And the prayers that the radio ministry prayed for us, saved my child, brought the prodigal back. All of these things that it's doing, I think we're all a part of that. It's not just one person in charge. We're all part of it. And also, honestly, with the times that we're living in, being listener supported, we're not taking money from anyone that we have to mind their rules or anything like that,
Yeah.
and it's a crazy time. And we want to keep being here strong so that we can keep proclaiming the truth of God's word. So,
Wow, that's fantastic. And so I really like the part where you say, and just so you know, it's real easy to donate. You guys just had Spring Impact Days, and I could just hear the phones ringing in the background, and you guys excited. But you can give year round. There's places on your website, real easy to access, where folks can donate. And those of us who have done that from time to time, it's like you say, we feel like we're a part of it. We feel like we're invested, not just financially, but we're invested emotionally, spiritually, and we're all kind of part of that team. I really like that. I'm gonna get a picture here now of you in action. I'm gonna go straight to this one.
oh boy.
And and I want you to talk a little bit about how you ended up in that chair. I know that wasn't your first choice in life when you were in high school, and I've listened to some podcasts of yours and read some of your writings that are posted. They do a great job on y'all's website. But tell us about the cheerleader thing first of all, and how that all evolved.
Oh, Rusty, I have I've walked a road like all of us have, but I started out, and I think probably my first big dream in life was to be a cheerleader. I wanted so badly to be a cheerleader. I just loved those little outfits, and I would go to the mall and I would see those girls coming straight from school wearing their cheerleading outfits, walking through the mall. That was my dream. I wanted that so badly, but
Yeah.
it just never worked out for me. It wasn't really in the cards. I'm not very flexible. I do love to cheer and I have a lot of enthusiasm, but I can't do the flips and all the things. And anyway, so the only time I ever tried out for cheerleading was actually in college. So I worked so hard. It was like one of those TV movies. You could hear, the montage as the person was practicing,
The background
all by
music. Yeah.
herself, trying and learning. And I got my friends who had been cheerleaders to teach me things. And it was just all going wonderfully. And it got time for the big cheerleading try. By the way, it takes me 2 weeks to stretch out so that I can do a split. 2 full weeks of stretching every day. But I did it. And I even got on top of somebody's shoulders. I just was terrified, but I wanted it so bad. I did not make it, Rusty.
Oh,
I did not
no.
make it. It was like the TV movie went wrong. Wait, the ending was wrong. But they were so sweet to me. They gave me a cheerleading uniform. And guess what I did? I put it on and walked around the mall. It's true.
That is really a true story.
It's a true story. Yes. From my college, Central College in Danville, Kentucky.
Okay.
I think they took pity on me. They saw how hard I worked. And I did not get the cheerleading outfit actually to be worn in the games, but I did get to take it home with me. So I had that for several years. It was hard to put, get rid of that. I gripped onto it. But, the thing is, as I have learned during that time, and I've learned many times since then, our wishes, the things we think would be great, end up not being the path that God has for us,
right,
because he has a better path. And so I don't know what would have happened had I gotten to be a cheerleader there in college. That was my freshman year, and I did not make it. And so I was searching for something else to get involved in. And a friend of mine was in the drama group, and she said, "Why don't you try out for a play?" I was like, okay, that sounds kind of fun. Well, I tried out for a play, and I found that was a talent that God had gifted me. And I dove into theater and was in theater for about 20 years.
Wow.
I
Good.
started doing theater in college. I started interning at the Barter Theater in Abingdon, Virginia. I was in their intern group, and then stayed on with them on their, they had like a team that would stay throughout the year. And I stayed there for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years. Then I started doing traveling theater. I traveled to different regional theaters across the country. I did touring Shakespeare. And that took
I'm
me
impressed.
all over. Oh yeah. We went worldwide. It was kind of exciting. I was young as an actor and in this troupe, and we went to Edinburgh, Scotland. We went to Neuss, Germany. We performed in Paris, France, all kinds of places. We even went to Iceland.
Hey, you went places none of those cheerleaders went.
Thank you, Rusty. That's very encouraging. But honestly, I'll go to a football game and I will still just stare at the cheerleaders and have to repent from jealousy, because I love it. It's so fun. And I just wish I could do that. But yes, had I not, or had I gotten to be a cheerleader, I don't think I would have gotten into acting in the same way. Okay. And that took me all around the world, including New York City, and all of the different pieces that God has woven together to put me in the place I am now.
Well, so I would hate to ask you impromptu for a "Wherefore art thou Romeo" kind of line, but that stuff is not really English. I mean, that's really hard to memorize, that stuff, isn't it, compared to us just being old country boy? You had to say words that were unnatural.
Rusty, do you want to hear something interesting?
I would love to.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think it's interesting. I hope you will too. The fact is, Appalachian speak, some of the mountain speak, is much closer to how Shakespeare group spoke in the time that it was written. Yes. Now think about it like this. This is what we know. So when we came over from England and people went into the mountainous areas, they were there by themselves, kind of, they didn't get a lot of cross influences. Whereas people that went to New York and they went, different places, a lot of more people coming through influence the way they speak. And they really believe that Appalachian speak, mountain speak is much more similar to how Shakespeare spoke in his day. And so when someone from the mountains speaks Shakespeare, it actually kind of feels kind of natural in a sense. It kind of rolls off the tongue a little bit.
My whole self-image just shot through the roof and improved.
Sorry, Rusty.
Well, I think that's fabulous because I've gone to California and I've got cousins in California and his friends, and they would just say, "Just talk." And I thought they thought I was interesting and smart. They didn't care about anything I said. They just wanted to hear me talk. So I could have done Shakespeare and they would have liked that.
There you go. You just need a couple of lines and you'll be good.
So, but that wasn't the only thing you were interested in. I know you spent a lot of time as an exercise specialist, a fitness instructor, all that stretching did you well in college. So how did that come about as well?
Well, the truth is you got to make a living and you can't always act. So you got to pick up another occupation.
Okay.
Yes. The side job as an actor. And I was not very good at all at waiting tables. In fact, I was terrible as a waiter. So I had to look for greener pastures and I found it at the gym.
Okay.
There's actually kind of a story. I don't know, you may have heard this, but so I was waiting tables and making a lot of mistakes, living in New York City, trying to find my way as an actor, trying to get my big break. And I was waiting tables at a wonderful restaurant, big fancy restaurant called Gramercy Tavern.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just very unhappy. I had moved away from God at that time in my life. I was making a lot of bad choices. Although I would have told you still that I was a Christian, and I believe I was. I mean, I would pray, but I just wasn't living my life for Christ. I wasn't making those sorts of decisions. And I remember I was walking to work one day and I had a double shift at the restaurant and I hated waiting tables. I was just miserable. And I was waiting tables. I was walking to this restaurant and I was going to an intersection in New York City, and a cab driver comes screeching up and he almost hits me. He was trying to be a bully in the cab. And I just was filled with anger because I just wasn't in a good place. And I remember the moment. It was so clear to me. I took my hand and I banged it on the top of his cab, like banged it as hard as I could.
Wow.
And then, Rusty, I did something no one should do. I told him he was number one.
Are you allowed to say this on the? Okay.
Well, I don't know. It's your page. I told him he was number one in the not good way. It was just a moment of horrible anger and just culminating depression and frustration. And it hit me at that moment. I was like, who have I become? Who is this? This is not me. This is not who I was raised to be. This is not who I was. And all of the things, just living in this dump, in an apartment in New York City, waiting tables, which I hated, trying to get acting jobs, which they weren't coming. Everything just culminated. And I thought, I have to get back to God. I've got to change my life. And I started going to church. And at that same time, I started exercising more. I always loved exercise. I've always been an exerciser. I was having to do like aerobics classes when I was in the 6th grade because I was always trying to control my weight, but I got back into exercise and I loved it so much that I started becoming a personal trainer and getting into exercise science and motivating people, which was something that I enjoy doing. And so personal training was a good fit for me because I was encouraging people to get healthy again and utilizing exercise. And so that's kind of how I got into exercise and fitness and personal training. There's so many like weird little parts of my story that don't make sense. You can't put them together. It's only God who puts them together. But that's how I got into exercise and how I renewed my faith in Christ and kind of got back into church was that day.
Well, okay. Well, I would say that's and I hope the folks who are listening can relate because a lot of us have had those who am I moments. And I've given that testimony myself of a time that I was a freshman in college and looked in the mirror after a night of partying. And I
Mm-hmm.
knew I just happened to glance in the mirror as I was going by, and I stopped and looked at myself, and my eyes were a little bit bloodshot, and I was getting ready to head back out to where everybody was. And I just remember looking at myself and saying, "Who are you?"
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I could tell you that at that moment that it was a rock bottom moment that and some people have the rock bottom moment with alcohol, drugs, or whatever type things, but some of them are just kind of simple moments like slamming a taxi. But I wish I could say I turned at that moment, but it actually took probably another 6 to 8 months for me
Mm-hmm.
to gradually turn back to the Lord when I was that
Mm-hmm.
age. So I think a lot of people can relate to that story because every come to Jesus moment, as we might call it, has a kind of a different plot. And yours was the cab. I love that story.
Mm-hmm.
I wish it hadn't happened, but I'm glad it happened because I
Yeah.
think it rang a bell for
It
you.
rang a bell. It rang a bell. And Rusty, I think I met an angel after that because there was a girl who came to work at the radio, not the radio station. She came to work at the restaurant.
Hmm.
And I forget her name. I think it was Simone, but she started working there as a hostess. And so she would stand there and greet people and sit them in their section that they would be eating at. And I was a waiter, and she and I got to talking. And I told her, this was after that moment with the cab. I was like, "Well, I am a Christian." And she said, "You are? That's great. Me too. Where do you go to church?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Go to church?" I didn't know people really, did that. I mean, I
Hmm.
did that as a kid, but I wasn't going to church. I wasn't even thinking about going to church. She invited me to go to church with her. And I said, "Okay, what time?" And she's like, "Oh, we need to meet at like 8:30." I said, "That's too early." She said, "Well, don't worry. I'll get us seats. You just meet me there. So you can come at like 9 or 9:15. Or I don't remember the timing, but she did it all. She told me where to meet her. She got us the seats. She encouraged me to be there. And I met her and I went to that church service. It was at Times Square Church in
Wow.
New York. And it's an amazing church. Do you know it?
I've,
David Wilkerson, who wrote The Cross and the
David
Switchblade,
Wilkerson. Yeah.
Carter Conlon.
There's two David Wilkersons, but he's the one that wrote Run, Baby Run and The Cross and the Switchblade,
Yes. And
right?
he
About the,
started this church in Times Square.
yeah.
And I went to that church. And honestly, the first time I went to the church, I thought, this is too much. People are a little over the top here.
Hmm.
And I was like, "Thank you for inviting me." But I did not go back for a while, but it never left my mind or my heart. And she somehow disappeared. This girl, Simone,
Really?
like she worked at the restaurant for a period of time. And then I never saw her. She just left one day and I never saw her, never got to say thank you. I'd love to see her. She was the most beautiful thing. I keep thinking maybe she was an angel. I don't know. You
Maybe
never know,
so.
right? She was so lovely and just wispy and ethereal. And she just was gone one day. But because of her inviting me to church, I kept thinking about it, and it took me about a month. And then I went back again on my own. And then I went back again. And then I started to go back again and again and again. So it was a process, but she really was part of that process.
So, Simone, if you're listening out there, thank you for your obedience. Thank you for being
Yes.
a witness to Tricia. And you guys will maybe, if you don't see each other in life, you're going to see each other in eternity because she made a difference to you. And the
And
Lord
thank
used
you.
her,
And
obviously.
thank you to everybody who invites people to church,
Yes.
because my story is one of millions of people that when someone takes the time to invite them, even if it's a little uncomfortable, you don't know how God can use that to just make that turn in someone's life.
And how many times have you, and I've heard this on your radio station where people were talking about they were flipping through the radio station and just happened upon 106.9 or another Christian radio. And I heard somebody tell a story one time about how every time they use a rental car, they always leave it on the Christian radio station so the next person will hear that.
Yeah.
And somebody said that it actually witnessed to them and they would never listen to Christian radio and something came on and it changed their life. And somebody will never know how they touched another person just by doing that. So
It's true. It's so true.
Well, so we're still not to 106.9 yet. You end up as a fitness instructor and somehow up in Asheville, North Carolina, which we're glad you're in North Carolina instead of New York. You can tell us how that happened, and then how does 106.9 happen through all this?
So I was living in New York, and as I said, after that moment, I started kind of moving back to my relationship with God, and I started praying. I'd been in acting for 18, 19 years. That had been the majority of what I'd done. And I started to ask God, is this what you want from me now?
Hmm.
And he said, no. And it was so hard. It's
Yeah.
all I knew. It's all I knew. And he basically all the doors were closing. And I just had that sense that it wasn't the right direction moving forward. God certainly used it behind me, but moving forward. And so I actually was praying. I went through a kind of a time of real soul searching, just on my face praying, what am I supposed to do? If I'm not an actor, I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am. But I was still working as a fitness professional. And so I had always been interested in therapy. I thought therapy was interesting, like when people, talk therapy.
Yep.
And I noticed when I was working as a fitness professional, I'd be personal training someone, and I would be sitting down with them, and I would either be stretching them or helping them with an exercise, and they'd be doing the exercise. And as they were doing the exercise, they would tell me their deepest, darkest secrets. Like, well, I'm
Yeah.
really struggling with my husband and our marriage.
Wow.
And I started to see there's some sort of a connection between using your body and going deep in how you're feeling. There's a connection between the mind and the body.
Hmm.
And so I thought, maybe I'm supposed to do some kind of combination between exercise and therapy, exercise therapy. So I went back to school. I got my advanced degree from Columbia in social work, with the idea that I wanted to combine exercise and therapy together. And I ended up being in New York for 9/11 and going
I did
through
not
some
know that. Wow.
real rough times. Oh, that I had a lot of anxiety since then. I've had claustrophobia and panic attacks and different things that I've had to lean on God more than ever for, with
Wow.
with regard to that. But 9/11 was actually my first day as an intern at a mental health facility while I was getting my degree. And I'll
Interesting.
never forget it. It was literally my first day. I walk into this facility, and I know that I'm working with people that have schizophrenia and different
Hmm.
kind of mental health disorders. And it's a day treatment program. So they come here and they spend the day there, and we're to kind of help them and therapeutically work with them in all kinds of ways. And I walked into the building on 9/11. I had come from my apartment down to Brooklyn, past the World Trade Center. Everything was still up. And I remember thinking, what a gorgeous day this is. So beautiful.
Yep.
This is going to be a great commute. And I get into this facility, and a woman comes up to me and says, Have you heard? Have you heard a plane hit the World Trade Center? And Rusty, I thought she was having a mental health issue. I was like, and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that."
Yeah.
I didn't know what to be expecting. It
Sorry
was
to
so
laugh, but
crazy.
that's funny.
I know it was a crazy, unbelievable experience. And then it wasn't until the staff started to really understand that
Hmm.
something was going on that we figured out what was happening. But um, I worked in a therapeutic realm for a period of time. Now, I know this is so confusing, but I was working as a therapist post graduation in Brooklyn, and I decided our family was going to take a trip to Myrtle Beach. And my best friend growing up and her husband at the time were living in Myrtle Beach, and he was in the radio. He had done years and years of radio, and he was working at a country station in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And when I said, Carrie, we're going to be down in Myrtle Beach, she said, oh, great. And then her husband, Mark, said, why don't you come be on the morning show with me when you're down there? And I said, well, I don't know. What would I do? He said, we'll just have some fun, because we always enjoyed each other. His name
Yeah.
was Mark, and we always had a lot of fun teasing each other. He said, just come on and we'll have fun. We'll see what happens. So we're there in Myrtle Beach on a vacation. I drive and I go and I sit with him on the morning show. And we had the silliest, best time.
Yeah.
We were laughing and goofing off. And I remember thinking, you get paid to do this? What is this? I cannot even believe this is your job. Because I'm sitting there in Brooklyn working on, mental health treatments. And
Yeah.
it was so hard. The work was so heavy. And here he's like goofing around and doing funny voices. And anyway, I went back to Brooklyn.
Getting paid to do it.
Getting paid to do it. I went back to Brooklyn and he called me and he said, I'm starting a radio show. I'm starting a radio station in Asheville, North Carolina. It's going to be 80s music. I know you love the 80s music. I still have 80s hair. He said, why don't you be on the morning show with me? I said, Mark, I can't. I don't even know what radio is. I know nothing about it. He said, don't worry. I don't want you to. I just want you to have coffee and just talk with me the way we talk. And I said, well, okay. And my husband was able to find a job in Asheville. He's an architect. My husband, David.
Yeah.
He found a great job. So it was just like God was like, door, 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 door. And so that we kind of took that as the sign that we were going to kind of move away. And we never looked back. We moved to Asheville. This has been maybe 16 years. Okay. And so I worked with him on a secular station, Star 104.3. It was a lot of 80s music at that point. We had a lot of fun.
Music.
Huh?
I like that 80s music.
Yes. Sadly, I know all the lyrics.
I do too. Oh, goodness. Yeah, the kids get on me all the time because every 80s song that comes on, I can sing it all and I can tell you where I was and what I was doing whenever the song was popular, and they hate that. But anyway, go ahead.
That's funny. Well, so I worked there for about 3.5 years. And I was like, well, this is really a lot of fun. But I felt like God was calling me to make a move, but I didn't know where. I would listen to 106.9. Mm-hmm. It goes by Light FM now, but it went by 106.9 then. And I would listen to 106.9 driving to my radio job. Yeah. And I would do my radio job, which I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just chatting with him. And then I would get in the car and I would listen to 106.9 the rest of the day. I didn't even know where it was located. I didn't know anything about it. But when I started to find out about it, I thought, well, that would be great. I actually applied at 106.9, the Light FM, and got turned down twice, really, before.
Ooh, that's another cheerleading story, isn't it?
Yeah. And so I thought to myself, well, that's not the direction that God's calling me to go in. So I'm going to go back to fitness. And I started working at Mission Hospital's Weight Management Center, a job I absolutely loved. I wouldn't have left that job for any job. And I always said this, I'll never leave this job for anything but the morning show on 106.9 The Light. That's all I ever said.
Yeah.
And then one day I got a call and I was offered the morning show on 106.9 The Light after 7 years of loving my time as an exercise specialist at Mission. And so I started there. It's been 9 years. Well, this summer will be 9 years that I've been at The Light.
That's fantastic. And
it's a crazy story. It makes no sense.
It's like you said, the pieces of the puzzle don't fit together, except in God's eyes, he had it all. Deuteronomy 31:8 says he goes before us. So he knew all this before it came to pass. He knew how it was going to all work together. And by the way, on behalf of all the listeners, we're glad it did. So I want to I'm going to share another screen here because it looks to me, and when you and I first came on, you had some hecklers in the background. And it just seems to me that you guys have a lot of fun there, that it's very much a family atmosphere and y'all enjoy each other. And that's going to lead me to my next thing I want you to talk about is that Girl Talk podcast. Now, I'll have to admit that thing's not just for girls, because I've heard a few clips and seen some things. I think there's y'all tell girl stories, but there's some spiritually relevant things that all of us can benefit from. I know you're involved. I know Carol's like one of the funniest human beings ever.
Yes.
And then I think the third person's kind of changed depending on who it is. So tell me how that came about and what you guys are doing, and then this big deal that's coming up in the a week or so. Tell me about all that.
Yes. So Carol, it was Carol's brainchild. I think God put it on her heart, but she had no idea what he wanted to do with it. She just thought, wouldn't this be fun to kind of, it was like the beginning of podcasts. People
Yeah.
are like, let's do podcasts. Okay. She said, let's just get together and just chat. And so at that time, it was Carol and me and our friend Alicia. And we just got into the studio and just sat down and just started talking about what was kind of on our heart. And it
Yep.
might be like, how do you handle busyness, just kind of what we were dealing with at that time, or parenting fails, or how can how do you love your spouse, or whatever it was. And we would just sit down and talk. And what makes Girl Talk different than I think a lot of the podcasts that are happening now is that there's no expert. We're not interviewing someone. There's no authority. It's literally just three girls who are trying to live out our faith. And
Mhm.
it's a safe place to talk about some of the struggles and some of the challenges and some of the victories. Now, Alicia left, and so our sweet friend Kelly Brandon has joined us. And
Okay.
she brings an amazing depth to it. As you mentioned, Carol is hilarious, but she's also very, very spiritually attuned.
Yes, she
And
is.
she leads a lot of what we do. And then Kelly brings a real depth too, and she's done a lot of Bible study. And I feel like I'm kind of like, well, I'm everybody else. So, which is fine. I don't mind it because it's a lot of fun. But we just talk about what we're going through. And so we sit together, and our friend Karina is with us as well, as we sort of try to strategize what do we want to talk about? What are we going through? What are people going through? What are people really feeling? And how can we open up a place where you can be honest about your struggles, but yet still trying to bring glory to God? Because that's what it's all about. So it's hopefully a safe place for honest conversations that end up pointing to God. That's the goal of it. And we've been having so much fun, and we love the community that's come around us. It's bigger than we thought it would be.
Mhm.
We've done a few live episodes and virtual events, and it's amazing. I think people have been very isolated lately. Oh, I don't think that. I know that. And
Yes.
having a place to come together and feel like you are joining with friends in a safe place is something that a lot of people are appreciating. And we are having a live event Thursday, April the 15th at 6:30. It's free. We've got some wonderful sponsors who've come alongside and made it possible for us. And we're going to worship with Laura Story, who sings Blessings
Yeah.
and Mighty to Save. And we're just going to worship with her. We're going to talk about some of our expectations that haven't been met this past year and now, and how we deal with that. And then we're going to dive into God's word and see um, what his word says about that. And so it's kind of like we're all kind of taking hands and walking together down a path. So would love it if you join us. And it isn't just for girls. We call it Girl Talk because it's
Yeah.
girls talking. But guys are so welcome.
And it is, from what I understand, a free event, right? Because of the
Mhm.
sponsors, it's a
Yep.
Zoom, it's
Completely
a Zoom
free,
call. Okay.
virtual and free. Yep.
Virtual and free. I like that. I'm looking forward to that. So people can, and there's more information on the Light FM website, which is easily
Yes.
Google searched, and I think people enjoy. So you mentioned, Tricia, you mentioned about how you guys share your struggles, and I heard you one day on the radio, and this is when I really, and by the way, you guys all do a great job of making those of us who are listening, whether we're driving a car or listening at home, feel very connected and very personal, like you're talking to us, even though it's mass media. And you shared one day about losing your mother. And I know that was a tough time in your life. So I know y'all have shared in the Girls Talk podcast things you've struggled with. Tell me about that. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of people can relate to this and see how you've handled it, might be an inspiration to others.
Well, honestly, God has carried me through. That's the truth. There's no really very little I've done. He's carried me through, but it was the hardest time of my life. There's no question about it. My mom was killed in a head-on automobile accident. The automobile that hit them was driven by a woman who was on drugs at the time, and
Mhm.
she and her boyfriend were fighting, and they were tussling in the car, and she lost control of the car, and it scooted over, and then she corrected, and it hit my parents head on.
Mm.
And Carol was with me. We drove to the site. I saw her. I saw my dad, who was also there, and they were at my house because they were watching my children for me. My husband was out of town,
Mm.
and because I had to go into work so early, I was doing the morning show. I couldn't leave my kids. So whenever my husband would go out of town on work, my parents would generally come up and watch the kids. And so they had stayed. It was a Thursday night, and we had gone for a walk. We'd gone to the gym together. We'd had a dinner together. I saw her reading to my children the night before, told her I loved her, got up that morning, went to work on a normal Friday, and got that call that changes everything
Yeah.
about 10 o'clock in the morning. And she died 2 days later as a result of extensive injuries. Um, and there was a lot of peace when she went to heaven because we knew exactly where she would be, and we
Yeah.
didn't want her hurting, and she was crushed. Her body was crushed. Um, but then the questions started, like, why?
Yeah.
Why would you do this? Here I am trying to serve you with my life, telling people all about you. Why
Yep.
would you take my mom, the most godly woman I know? And I had a lot of struggles with questions I never would have told you that I would have asked. Like, literally, I remember one day going, do I believe all this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
I
there really
understand.
a heaven? Like,
Mhm.
what? Where's my mom? And why would a good God do this? And I struggled with some questions, but I never stopped asking them to God. I think that's the key. You
Yes.
got questions, you're going to have questions, but you got to keep asking God the questions. Don't take them to someone else. Don't shut him out. Don't shut yourself out. Take your questions to God, and I believe he will make a way to answer the questions, or at least give you his presence to get you through those times. He never did answer the question why,
Yeah.
although I look back now and I think my mom would have hated this whole COVID. She would have been
Mhm.
so scared. She had breathing problems.
Mm.
Could be God saved her from a terrible illness, a terrible
Yeah.
fight, struggle, all those things. You wonder those things. But I learned that you're not always going to get your questions answered. What you have to have is the relationship with God to see you through it and see his love in it. And I started going to Grief Share, which is an amazing grief Bible study,
Mhm.
only given in churches. It's fantastic. And that helped me answer so many needs, not questions, but needs. And it helped remind me of God's sovereignty and his love for me, even in the middle of this. I want to share one thing with you because this was really powerful.
Yeah.
As I told you that they were at my house, I saw in your face, Rusty, the feeling that I had, which was like, oh, that's
Yeah.
terrible. And
It brings it all kind of together, makes it real
yeah,
personal for you that they
yeah,
were right there.
and makes me think, oh, it's my fault.
Yeah, that maybe if you hadn't done
Yeah,
this, you start doing all
exactly.
the A
Yes,
plus B
sir.
equals C.
All of that. And
Mm.
I carried that guilt like a stone on my shoulders, and I knew everybody else was thinking that too. It's my fault. If it hadn't been for me, mom would be alive. Well, in Grief Share, they talked about that very thing. They talked about the Bible verse, God determines the number of our days.
Mhm.
We can't add one more to them. We can't take one more away from them. That being the case, if I believe that, which I do, it would have happened. It would have happened wherever she was. It was her day to go see Jesus. It
Yeah.
was her day. And the fact that she was at my house the day before, see, I didn't get to see her every day. She lived in Kingsport, Tennessee, like 2 hours up the road. The fact that she was at my house was a blessing. I got to see her one more time. I got to love her. I got to
Exactly.
kiss her.
Yeah.
And I got to see her in the hospital and tell her one more time that I loved her because it happened at my house. I got to see her read to my kids one more time. It
Yeah.
took what was a curse and made it a blessing.
That'll preach right there.
Yeah.
Um, because sometimes we feel guilty over things that are very innocent. Like if I had done this, and you're just going through your daily life,
Yeah.
and we're too hard on ourselves when as you say, our days are ordained, and God sees the big picture, and we just see, well, if I hadn't done this, or if I hadn't done that, and
Yeah.
we bear all that when Jesus bared it all for us. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think what's encouraging to me is that we have a Christian radio host here who's admitting that she asked God why, and had to even question, like a lot of our Bible characters did, the very existence of, do I really, it takes you to your core,
Mm-hmm.
because now you have to really decide, is this just something that I'm leaning on in life, or is this
Mm-hmm.
my foundation?
Mm-hmm.
Is there really an eternity? And as I mentioned, once I finished coaching, I got ordained and had to go through a process. I didn't go to seminary, but I had to go through a process. And these were some deep questions. I had to really ask myself that too. And it wasn't a tragedy that brought that across, but I've dealt with people who are dealing with a lot of things where it does take you to it takes away all the
Mm-hmm.
layers, any
Yeah.
layer that you may have. And I think people can
Mm-hmm.
relate to that now. And hopefully that's inspiration of people who might be
Mm-hmm.
um, struggling with those kind of things. So she was a major part of your family, and she's
Oh,
with the
yes.
Lord now. You
Yes.
mentioned your husband, David,
Mm-hmm.
earlier, and I know you have two sons. And I want to
Yes.
share a picture that you sent to me, and I want to see if you can tell us a little bit about them. Can you see that at the moment? Have I got it on share?
I don't see it yet.
Okay, let me get it back to share, because I want folks to see this
Well, I got
lovely.
to thank you, Rusty, because you're like, can you send me a family picture? And I look at my phone. I have no family pictures. I got to be better at taking pictures. I think this was from like a year and a half ago.
Y'all need to get busy, don't you?
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So yes, that's my husband David. And then to on the left hand part of the screen, as I'm looking at it, that's my Daniel.
Okay.
He is 11 years old. And then to my right in the picture, that is Sam. And he
Okay.
is 14 years old holding the peanut butter crackers.
Yeah. I
We
saw
had gone
another picture.
hiking.
I think he's a good head taller than you now too.
That is the truth.
He's hit
That
the
is
growth spurt.
100% the truth. And I gave him my curls. So
Okay. Well, so how do you balance? I know you want to be a great mom to them, but you sound very busy with all the other things. How do you balance all that in your life?
I don't. I absolutely 100% don't. I don't do it well. It's the truth. I mean, I think about things I need to do or should have done or would have done a lot of the time. And I don't think it's possible to do it all well. I try to prioritize every day. I have learned that in order to be the mom that I want to be, and the wife I want to be, and the employee and the friend and the sister and the daughter that I want to be, I have to spend time with the Lord first. And so I have to spend my time, reading my Bible and praying. I'm learning a lot more about praying lately. And then I can be a much better mom and a better wife to David, and they deserve it. And um, I try to kind of portion out my day, really, the first part of the day reading my Bible study and doing that, and then seeing the kids and trying to get them to school and start their day off right. And then it's work time. I'm work. And then when I leave work, I kind of just change hats and I put on the mom hat, and I'm taking the kids to tennis or band or something like that, or trying to facilitate play dates. And I love to be active. I just therapeutically, I have to move. I have to move my
Yeah,
body. So I've been doing a lot of tennis playing lately. So I'll do like some tennis and then try
that's
to
what
come
I'm doing
home.
lately. Okay.
All right, Rusty, let's do it now. Come on.
That would be great. Ever since I retired from coaching, at the baseball complex and at Gardner Webb, we shared the offices with the tennis coaches, and the tennis courts are right there. And I watched them for 17 years playing. And I said, if I ever retire one day, I'm gonna walk out there and start playing. I've been doing that for a year now, and it's a great
How cool.
sport. So hey,
That's so cool.
we'll play
That's
sometime.
so cool. We'll play some tennis. Yeah. I actually started playing tennis after mom died
Oh,
because it reminded me of her. Because I used to play. I grew up playing and then I stopped for years. Mom played. And so it just reminds me of her. So every time I play tennis, it's kind of like a little hug to my mom.
that's fantastic. And I noticed that you say you wear you wear the mom hat. The mom hat says the Light FM on it right there. So
Yes, it does. Those are two sweet boys, I tell you. And my mom has prayed for them since they were in my womb. I had infertility issues too,
oh
and
my,
real struggling to get pregnant. And she prayed for both of those boys, and we have believed for them to be generals in God's end time army. Those are the words that she used
that's
then, which we didn't
fabulous.
even know about. But so we continue to pray over them, generals in God's end time army.
That's
Sam and Daniel, and they're such sweet boys with good hearts. And we're trying. My husband and I, we want to do more. We want to lead Bible study. We want to put them in Christian school. We can't afford it. But we're, we're praying over them. And then we always remind ourselves that God loves them more than even we love them. And he is
yeah,
going to take care of them.
he is.
And he is going to make up for all the shortfalls that we bring to the table. And they're sweet boys. They both play tennis. They're funny. Daniel's an artist like my mom was. And Sam is brilliant like his dad is. And so they're sweet, sweet boys. And I love them so much.
And as well, you should. Now, I love it when people get that gleam in their eye
Mm.
when they're talking about their family. It's very obvious what they mean to you. So, as we begin to kind of wrap up, I want to give you a chance to share your heart about maybe an important or a very essential Bible verse in your life, or even
Mm.
something lately that's been
Yeah.
on your heart. I find that people who you say you pray and you read your Bible, that the Lord speaks to us all differently through verses. So what might be one that's been significant to you?
Well, so mom died 2 years ago in April.
Okay.
And let's see if I can find the verse that I used to. She died, and the following year. So really, the time of healing, working towards healing, was up until the first part of the year of 2020, and God gave me. I feel like God gave me a verse to hold on to. I'm going to find it. Hebrews 12:1 and 2. And I have been holding on to this ever since her accident and then the healing that came from it. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. And it goes on, and there's many things that go on in it. Some of the things that I really take away from this: running our race with perseverance. It takes effort.
Mm.
And for a long time, I just sort of coasted with my faith, but I realized to grow, to make it in this world, it takes the time and the effort to read. It's to read his word, to pray, to seek him. But he is so good when we do that, to come so much further than we come. We take a single step and he comes rushing to us. And that is so, so good. But we do have to take that step. And so
Yeah.
that helps me when I think about running with perseverance. Don't give up, keep going. And the race that's been marked out for us, it's us. He's chosen it for us, which means he knows we can do it, and he's going to give us what we need to get through it. The race is marked out for us. I have my race, you have your race, and God is going to give us what we need to do our race. And then this was the hugest piece, is fixing our eyes on Jesus. If we look at our circumstances, if we look at our losses or even our accomplishments, we will get sidelined. We will trip. But if we fix our eyes on Jesus, we will move forward confidently with the joy that he has given us. And I have seen this in my life. And then one final piece that I love is, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses.
I wondered if
I
that was coming or not.
Yeah, I know that's talking about like Moses and Abraham and wonderful things like
But
that.
your mom is all in that verse.
That's what I think.
Hmm.
I just see her. She's my cheerleader.
Yeah. The beginning of that verse, as soon as you said cloud of witnesses, I thought of her when you're talking about she was the finest
Yep, that's
you
it.
ever knew. And that's why that verse has really been significant to you, even more so now that she's celebrating. And
She's cheering.
she's
Yeah.
cheering and waiting on your arrival, which we hope is a long time from now because you got a lot to accomplish.
Unless Jesus comes, today would be
Yeah.
good.
You know what? I heard somebody say on the radio the other day, said like, the odds of a person dying are 100%. Everybody that's ever lived has died. Now, that's not really true. There's 5 billion people right now that haven't died. That if Jesus came back, we wouldn't die. We would just. I don't know that all 5 billion would go up in the clouds, but there's there's no guarantee of a natural death with this
That's right.
impending return. So that being said, we were kind of to our purpose point. Why do you think that? What is it that you, when you ask your why question, why do you think God put Tricia Kelly on this earth? Why does He wake you up each morning and say, "Here's what I want you to do with this life that I've given
It's in your title, His glory.
you"?
That's it. That's it. And the older I get and the more I do, the more I realize that's why. That's why. That's why prayers are answered. That's why lives are changed. That's why um, He can redeem someone who did something terrible to a cab driver. That's why. It's because it's His glory. He gets glory from all of those things. That's why we can be honest about our struggles. That's why we
Yeah,
can be transparent about where we've come from, because it all points to His glory. He can do all things. He can change me. He can change anybody. He can um, take care of all of our needs, and it's His glory. So, I mean, really, I'm learning. I'm not there yet. I'd love to say I'm thinking about that. I get road rage still. I get frustrated in the grocery store. I yell at my husband. All those things. But I do know that it's all for His glory. And if there's anything, whether it's playing tennis, whether it's the way we interact with each other online, it's all for His glory.
that's fabulous. You're human. I love to hear that. People are going to hear your voice on the radio now and say, "You know what? I can relate to her even more. She's human. She's
Oh.
hollered at her husband before." So
Yeah. Maybe too human.
maybe to him. Here's what I want to say. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your obedience to following God's will. I want to thank you for sharing your wonderful, soothing, calming voice with us every day on the radio. But most of all, I want to thank you for sharing your heart, because I think that's very inspirational. And I just want you to know, those of us that listen, we're very inspired and encouraged by you every day that we get to listen. And I will say in the same sentence, it's not just you. I listen to the other one, depending on what
Mhm,
time of day it is.
mhm.
And I just think that the Light FM truly is that, and is a great blessing to all of us who have the capability to either listen uh, on the radio, or even you can listen. I have the Light FM app on my phone where I can take it wherever I go,
Mhm.
and I just want people to know that, because lives are being changed because of obedience of people like you and the people at the station and other Christians all around the world who are doing what God has called them to do. So I'll give you the last word before we sign off today.
As are you, Rusty. You're doing what God's asked you to do, and here you are,
Well,
giving Him glory with all kinds of stories. So thank you for what you do.
okay, and thank you for being here. And as I tell folks that listen each week, if the Lord's willing and the creek don't rise, I'll be back again soon for another edition of our stories, His glory. God's blessings to all.